Ciao, popolo del coltello. Buonasera, signore e signori.
Tonight I'm speaking Italian.
Italian knives, that is. Specifically, MKM Isono and MKM Fara. I don't really speak Italian per se, but I can imitate pronunciation of Italian words pretty well. Because when I lived there, I picked up some vocabulary little by little. For example, sono russo immigrante, cercamo appartamento, which means I'm a Russian immigrant looking for an apartment. When I learned how to pronounce their words, everybody thought I am deficiente, somebody with a mental deficiency, because my pronunciation was spot on back then, but my vocabulary was like somebody with 76 IQ. Well, the jury's still out on that one. The Isono knife, it kind of resembles the greenery, the mountainous terrain, and a crooked river running through it.
These pictures are of the river called Isono, which is somewhere near the border between Italy and Slovenia.
If, like me, you thought that MKM is a knife shop or knife factory, you'd be wrong. MKM is Consorzio Castigliani Maniago, which means a consortium of Maniago knife makers. The factory that made this knife is denoted here. It's Makita. And the designer is Privaknes. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. This is the steel. FRN plastic construction. As you can see, the edges are left a little bit sharp. That's a cool thing about Italian knives. They crown the spine of the knife, but they left the inner edge of the scales pretty sharp. Looks like full liner on both sides of the knife. And this is anodized aluminum, bright copper. They call it orange. I think it's more of a copper. You can see the immense engagement of the liner to the blade. It's right at 50%. And the white sphere is the detent ball.
A ceramic detent ball.
So here's an interesting knowledge point. If you want to tell a well-designed knife from a poorly designed knife with a liner lock or frame lock, if you rotate the blade on a well-designed knife through the entire rotation, you will not see the hole or the divot that engages the detent. The reason for that is if the hole is exposed and you're working the knife, like I'm going to show you a comparable size Medford knife. See that divot right here? That's what engages the detent when the knife is closed. So when I'm using the knife, that by the way is a feature on all Medford knives. Here's a USMC fighter flipper. And as you can see, here's the divot. You can see it clearly right here. All his knives have that. And the reason you don't want it is when you're working the knife, especially a fighter knife, through something that's sticky, dirty, greasy, whatever, it will end up in that little divot hole. And when you go to close the knife, your detent will not engage, and then you won't be able to flip it. And then you won't be able to flip it. And then you won't be able to flip it. It's a Medford. Flipper is just the name. Anyway, another important feature that I noticed right away is this really nice finger choil. A knife this size will clearly be used to get into something detailed, and that will help. I'm not going to bore you with opening boxes with this knife. This is what it's going to excel at. It's extremely sharp from the factory. Let's try something.
The blade is on the short side, but for a knife with a factory edge to cut into a toilet paper roll like this, it takes some doing. This has every evidence of being hand sharpened. First of all, there is a slightly convex primary bevel, and then there's a secondary bevel that probably came from running it on a stropping belt. That's what it looks like to me. The edge is not very toothy, even though the primary bevel kind of looks a little bit toothy, but it's not. The shape is called hogbill. Let's see. There you go. So you don't think I cut it from the top. It went quick. It actually hit it here and sliced in. So what can we learn from the ultimate steel nerd, Dr. Larrin Thomas, the author of Knife Engineering book, for which I provide a link in the description? Let's talk about N690 Steel. You can see from its composition, it's somewhere near 154 cm, which is an ingot steel. N690 is also an ingot steel. What you see here, it has pretty low carbon, less than 1.1% carbon, but pretty high chromium content. So most and foremost, this knife is going to be stainless. And then there's some additives here that ensure better carbide formation in this high alloy. And on this page that I was so desperately holding on to, that's the anneal curve. So at recommended 2000 Fahrenheit, you will be getting 62.5 RC. And then depending on annealing process, it then drops. The sweet spot here is what Dr. Larrin Thomas recommends is 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, 400 anneal, which squarely puts us at 57.5, 58 Rockwell hardness. So that's the balance type heat treat for this steel. So it will not be magnificent in edge retention or toughness. Toughness is not as important for a shorter blade like this. The cryogenic heat treat will give you a slightly better edge retention compared to anneal without cryogenic. The knife is well priced. I paid $80 for this knife. I've seen them made out of same steel with different blade shapes for as low as $50. I think the performance level that you get out of this knife and the price are well correlated in this case. I don't have a lot of small knives, but this has every indication of being a useful tool, not to mention an eye candy. So I am looking forward to years of use and abuse of this knife, cutting board review style. This is the information brochure found in all the MKM boxes, all 2 of them that I own to date. And that lists the companies that are members of the consortium of the Maniago knife makers. Pretty good names. I have a Larrin Steel knife, which I really like. It's Larrin Steel Nano. Happens to be another smaller knife. The next knife I'll be talking about is this slip joint. Also MKM, or Maniago Knife Makers Consortium knife. I bought it from Knife Center, who incorrectly identified it as a Mercury Knives product, where on the inside of the slip joint spring, clearly laser etched, is Mikita, which stands for Maniago Knife Innovation Italy. Mikita, that's who made this knife. Mercury is just another company in the consortium. I can see why they were mistaken. The model is Faro,
faro in Italian means lighthouse, but I think also means like a bright light source, sort of like a headlight on a car. And probably the reason they call it that is because of its high gloss satin finish that reflects a lot of light. Well, I was attracted to it, and it drew me like a fly to a light. Reason is, it's sort of a modern classic. Look at the features. It has a fuller and a fingernail groove that is very modern, and yet it's a classic drop point blade shape. Full liners, by the way. Very pleasant to touch burlap micarta. I think if I identified it correctly. Let me know in a comment if it's some kind of other type of micarta. I love these. The lanyard hole is immense here, which means I can use any kind of cordage. Really good steel, M390. I have no doubt that it is heat treated to imperfection. Reason is Italian companies are known for keeping steels on a slightly softer side in order to protect them from breakage. In other words, toughness is a priority there. This particular knife has very strong detents in all three positions: closed, middle, and open. And even though it has this immense fuller / finger groove, I was not able to use my thumb to open the knife. That's how strong the spring is. Yeah. So it's definitely a two-hand operation knife. Very satisfying, sort of smooth action. Has bronze bushings there. I like these decorative holes, 3 to each side. Not sure what they represent, just a touch of class, I call it. But a great thing about this knife, it comes with this pocket sheath. It's very snug out the box and has MKM logo and made in Italy. So you're getting Italian leather with this Italian micarta. Very cool. And the knife slips in this. It's pretty well retained in there. And this is not a simple belt loop. It's actually a magnetic flap. So what you would do, you can set it in your pocket and it magnetically sort of retains. It's not going to fall out of your pocket. Based on how tight this sheath is, you will not be able to pull the knife and leave this leather part in the pocket. You have to do what I just did. But it's kind of cool. Plus it has this immense lanyard hole, and should I not want to carry it in the sheath, I could just stick it in the pocket and use the lanyard to pull it out. I watched almost every video from the Knife Center and other retailers when the new knives come out. And Dave Anderson, especially, DCA, likes to talk about these detents in these positions. This is not something new or recently invented. Here's a very old, I think it's a Civil War era Barlow shape blade knife, or right after Civil War. And it's an American-made knife of unknown manufacturer, probably small town smith of some sort. It's been around, it's been beat up, the liner is bent here. It's like a loose, but check this out. Here's a detent. This is actually loose here because probably the metal on the spring, on the slip joint spring, probably worn out. But it has a pretty strong detent in this position and absolutely no play in the closed position. It's a very old knife. Look at the patina on that walnut scales here. Beautiful. This will age and patina nicely in the handle area. M390 is very stainless, so the blade itself will most likely not patina. I grew up with the slip joint knives. Just in the Soviet Union, they weren't making locking knives. I learned that when you, unlike the locking blade, when you cutting with this type of knife, you don't want your finger here or your thumb, because you will inevitably rotate the blade, or basically take the blade out of battery. Where you want your finger or thumb is right where the slip joint spring ends, right here. Right? So if you put your thumb as you're cutting, you're actually helping to keep the knife locked. How does that happen that the blade starts unlocking? If you're cutting into something that is sort of grippy, like a fresh wood branch, or maybe a hard salami, don't laugh. And so when you're pulling it out, it potentially can pull the blade into unlocking, not with this brand new spring, but you see what I'm saying. So if you keep your thumb or index finger as you're working on the spine here, right where the spring ends, you will have a very clear indication that the blade is about to unlock. You will feel it. And if you press it with your thumb on the hard cuts, you will actually keep it locked. And that's why I love the shape of this handle. And that's the same case with the old school slip joint knives. The handle is thicker in the back because that's where you want to grip it. See where it goes into the heel of my hand? And it positions my thumb perfectly in the slip joint right here. Same with this knife. It's more compact, but it nests nicely in your hand. And you really would be hard-pressed to put your finger or thumb in the wrong place. My hands are medium, which is probably why somebody like DCA hasn't noticed that, because he has much larger hands. But I imagine for a European dude, I'm pretty average size. So my hands should be pretty average too. You guys are bigger here in the United States. Anyway, I totally digress. I hope you find some of it useful and interesting. Anything else that I noticed about this knife? Not really. Pretty basic. I love the dark blue accents here. That's the theme. And really not much to dislike about this knife. It's definitely not a tactical weapon, but in a pinch, it would do any task. Also, hand sharpen. Oh, I haven't tested it yet. Let's try this paper towel roll. Forza Italia!